The voice coming through my apartment's ancient heating vent was unmistakably my wife's, but the words she was speaking weren't anything I'd ever heard her say to me in our 12 years of marriage. "Oh, Jace, you're so much more mature than the other students, so gifted in many ways. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories." I sat frozen at my kitchen table, a stack of algebra tests scattered in front of me, red pen still in my hand. The community college shared a ventilation system with the faculty apartments above, and sound traveled through those old ducts like whispers in a confessional. Elena's laugh drifted down, breathy, intimate, nothing like the tired sighs I'd been getting at home for months. "I can't believe we're doing this," came a younger male voice. Jace Porter, I realized, her star student in advanced Spanish conversation, 21 years old, scholarship athlete, golden boy with the kind of confident smile that made middle-aged women forget their wedding vows. "Believe it," Elena whispered. "You deserve special attention. Private tutoring." The sound of a door locking echoed through the ductwork. "My name is Trevor Langley, and I teach high school mathematics in Grayfield, New York, a college town that's seen better decades. I'm 37, balding slightly, and until 3 minutes ago, I thought my biggest problem was getting sophomores to care about quadratic equations. I drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic, shop at discount grocery stores, and my idea of excitement is finding a good documentary on Netflix. But sitting there in my cramped apartment above the language arts building, listening to my wife of 12 years seduce her student through the heating vents, I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Something that had been building for months as Elena grew distant, secretive, always working late with her gifted pupils. The sounds from below grew more intimate. I should have left, should have turned on music or gone for a walk. Instead, I reached for my phone and started recording. "Trevor doesn't understand passion." Elena's voice was clearer now, like she'd moved closer to the vent. "He's all numbers and logic, no fire, but you have fire, don't you, Jace?" "More than you know," came his cocky reply. I hit the stop button and stared at my phone screen. 43 seconds of audio that would change everything. In my math teacher brain, I was already calculating probabilities, mapping out variables, solving for revenge. Grayfield is the kind of small town where everyone knows everyone else's business, except when they're trying not to. The college employs half the town, directly or indirectly, and gossip spreads through the faculty lounges and coffee shops like wildfire. Elena had always been popular, beautiful, charismatic, the kind of woman who lit up rooms and made other wives feel inadequate. She taught Spanish at the community college, prided herself on connecting with students, especially the struggling ones who needed extra attention. Apparently, Jace Porter needed a lot of extra attention. I'd met him a few times at faculty events. 6'2", athletic build, studying business with a minor in Spanish. His father owned 3 car dealerships in the county, and Jace carried himself like someone who'd never heard the word no without a credit card following close behind. He was handsome in that generic way that made mothers clutch their daughters a little tighter and wives glance twice when their husbands weren't looking. The apartment above me had gone quiet. I imagined Elena straightening her blouse, checking her lipstick, transforming back into the professional educator who'd been coming home later and later each evening with stories about difficult students and extra office hours. My phone buzzed with a text from my boxing coach, Hank Murphy. "You coming to the gym tonight? Haven't seen you in a week." I stared at the message, then typed back, "Yeah, I need to hit something." Hank's gym was a converted warehouse on the edge of town, the kind of place where retired cops and frustrated husbands worked out their demons on heavy bags and speed bags. I'd started going there after Elena began her passionate phase of teaching, when our conversations dwindled to grocery lists and utility bills. "You look like hell," Hank said when I walked in 20 minutes later. He was 65, built like a fire hydrant, with cauliflower ears and hands that could crack walnuts. He'd been training fighters for 40 years and could read a man's troubles in the way he threw a punch. "Wife problems?" I said, wrapping my hands with practiced efficiency. "The pretty Spanish teacher? What's she done now?" I hit the heavy bag with a right cross that sent it swinging. "Found herself a gifted student." Hank nodded knowingly. "Ah, one of those situations." He held the bag steady while I worked. "What are you going to do about it?" "Haven't decided yet." "Well, when you do decide, make sure you land the knockout punch. Half measures just piss people off." I spent an hour working the bags, thinking about Elena's laugh, about Jace's confident voice, about the way she'd been looking at herself in mirrors lately, like she'd discovered something new and exciting. When I got home, her car was in the parking lot, and the light was on in our bedroom window. She was in the shower when I walked in, humming something in Spanish. Her clothes were laid out on the bed, a red dress I'd never seen before, lacy black underwear that definitely wasn't from the discount store where she usually shopped. "How was your day?" she called out when she heard me come in. "Educational," I said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "How was yours? Any gifted students need extra help today?" "Oh, you know how it is. Some of them just need more attention than others." The water shut off, and she emerged wrapped in a towel, skin flushed from the heat. She looked younger somehow, more vibrant than she had in months. "I'm going out with the girls tonight. Dinner at that new tapas place." "El Toro?" "That's the one. Don't wait up. You know how we get when we start talking." I watched her get dressed, noting how she applied makeup with unusual care, how she checked herself in the mirror from 3 different angles. The red dress hugged her curves in ways that made me remember why I'd fallen for her in college, back when she was Elena Martinez, the smart, funny girl who'd helped me pass Spanish 101 and then agreed to marry me after graduation. "Have fun," I said. She kissed my forehead, a gesture that felt more like dismissal than affection, and left, trailing perfume and lies. I waited 15 minutes, then got in my Honda and drove to El Toro. The restaurant was busy for a Tuesday night, filled with college students and young professionals. I found a spot at the bar with a clear view of the dining room and ordered a beer. The bartender was a woman about Elena's age, with short blonde hair and tired eyes that suggested she'd seen every kind of drama that small-town nightlife could offer. "You look like you're hunting," she said, sliding my beer across the bar. "Just watching," I replied. "I'm Tina, and you're the math teacher married to the Spanish teacher, right? Elena?" "Small towns." "Trevor Langley. You know my wife?" "She comes in here sometimes, usually with that young guy, tall, dark hair, drives the red Mustang." Tina wiped down glasses while she talked, her eyes scanning the room with professional awareness. "They sit in the back corner booth, order sangria and tapas and laugh a lot." As if summoned by her words, Elena walked through the front door. But she wasn't with her female colleagues. Jace Porter followed close behind, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. They moved through the restaurant like they owned it, confident and careless. "That him?" Tina asked quietly. I nodded, taking a long pull of my beer. They settled into the corner booth Tina had mentioned, sitting on the same side like teenagers. Elena threw her head back, laughing at something Jace said, her hand finding his thigh under the table. The gesture was casual, familiar, the kind of unconscious intimacy that comes from repetition. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. "Couple months, maybe more. They're not exactly subtle." Tina refilled my beer without being asked. "You gonna do something about it?" I watched Elena feed Jace a piece of chorizo from her fork, watched him lick his lips and whisper something that made her blush. Around the restaurant, other patrons were starting to notice. A few faculty wives I recognized were whispering behind their hands, shooting glances toward the corner booth. "Yeah," I said, standing up and pulling out my wallet. "I'm gonna do something." I walked over to their table, feeling every eye in the restaurant follow me. Elena looked up as I approached, and for just a moment, her face went completely white. Then she recovered, forcing a bright smile. "Trevor, what a surprise. What are you doing here?" "Having a drink," I said, looking directly at Jace. "And you?" "I thought you were having dinner with the girls." Jace shifted uncomfortably, but didn't remove his hand from Elena's leg. "Hey, Mr. Langley. Elena was just helping me with some advanced conversation practice." "I'll bet she was." I raised my beer bottle in a mock toast, speaking loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Here's to the gifted and the damned. May they get exactly what they deserve." The restaurant had gone quiet. Elena's face was burning red now, her eyes shooting daggers at me. Jace looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "Trevor, you're making a scene," Elena hissed. "Am I? I thought I was just appreciating good teaching when I see it." I took another sip of beer, savoring the moment. "Enjoy your conversation practice." I walked back to the bar, left a $20 tip for Tina, and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear Elena making excuses, Jace's voice rising in what sounded like an argument. The whispers had started in earnest now, spreading through the restaurant like ripples in a pond. Outside in the parking lot, I sat in my Honda and waited. 10 minutes later they emerged, Elena walking quickly toward her car while Jace followed, gesturing angrily. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language was clear. The magic of the evening had been thoroughly broken. Elena's car pulled out first, tires squealing slightly. Jace stood next to his red Mustang for a moment, looking around the parking lot like he was expecting trouble. He was right to expect it. I waited until he drove away, then followed at a distance. Instead of heading toward campus, he turned toward the old highway that led to the Sleepy Inn, a rundown motel that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. Elena's car was already in the parking lot. I parked across the street and took out my phone, snapping pictures of both vehicles. The timestamp would show they were there together, at the same time, at a place where the only business was the kind that destroyed marriages. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Gone to Sarah's house. Don't wait up." I typed back, "Have fun with the girls." Then I got out of my car and walked across the street to Jace's Mustang. The knife in my pocket was small, meant for opening boxes and sharpening pencils. It went through his front tire with a satisfying hiss. I was working on the second tire when footsteps crunched behind me. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I turned to find Jace standing 10 feet away, shirtless, his belt undone. Behind him, 2 other young men emerged from the shadows. His frat boyfriends probably called in for backup. "Solving a problem," I said, standing up slowly. The knife was still in my hand, and I made sure they could see it. "You know what problems are, don't you, Jace? Things that need to be corrected." "You're crazy, old man. That's vandalism. And what you're doing with my wife is adultery. I guess we both have legal issues to worry about." His friends moved closer, trying to flank me. They were younger, stronger, probably faster. But I'd been boxing with Hank for 2 years, and more importantly, I had nothing left to lose. "Walk away," one of them said, "before this gets ugly." I looked at the motel room door, where Elena was probably waiting, wondering what was taking so long. Then I looked back at the 3 young men who thought intimidation would solve their problem. "You know what?" I said, folding the knife and putting it back in my pocket. "You're right. This is getting ugly." I walked back to my car, started the engine, and drove home. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, I rolled down my window and called out, "Hey, Jace, better call a tow truck. It's going to be a long walk back to campus on those tires." The sound of his cursing followed me all the way to the street. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. It was time to do some research. Elena came home at 2 in the morning, moving quietly through the apartment like she was trying not to wake me. I lay in bed, listening to her brush her teeth, listening to her slip between the sheets with the careful movements of someone who'd been somewhere she shouldn't have been. "How was dinner with the girls?" I asked in the darkness. She went rigid beside me. "Fine. We talked too much, drank too much wine. You know how it is." I rolled over to face her. "Sarah looked good tonight." "Sarah?" "At El Toro, when I saw you there, with Jace." The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. Finally, Elena sighed. "Trevor, it's not what you think." "What do I think?" "He's just a student who needed help. We were discussing his final project. At a romantic tapas bar, sitting on the same side of the booth, with his hand on your leg. You're being paranoid." I reached for my phone on the nightstand and played the recording I'd made through the heating vent. Elena's voice filled the dark room. "Oh, Jace, you're so much more mature than the other students, so gifted in many ways." Elena shot up in bed like she'd been electrocuted. "You recorded us? That's illegal." "Actually, it's not. Single-party consent state, and I was in my own apartment. I looked it up." I stopped the playback before it got to the more incriminating parts. "Want to hear the rest?" She was quiet for a long time, and I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, calculating damage, formulating excuses. "It's not what it sounds like," she said finally. "What does it sound like?" Like I was encouraging a student, building his confidence. "By telling him he's gifted in many ways? By locking your office door?" The door was broken. It locks automatically sometimes. I had to admire her creativity, even as it disgusted me. 12 years of marriage, and she was lying to my face with the same casual ease she'd probably used to lie to dozens of other people. "Elena," I said quietly, "I saw you at the motel." That broke her. She started crying, not the pretty tears of remorse, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone who'd been caught and knew it. She tried to explain, tried to minimize, tried to blame me for not being passionate enough, romantic enough, young enough. I listened to it all with the detached interest of a scientist observing a specimen. This was my wife, the woman I'd loved for over a decade, and she was falling apart in front of me. I should have felt something: anger, sadness, betrayal. Instead, I felt only a cold clarity, like solving a particularly complex equation. "I want you to stop seeing him," I said when she finally ran out of words. "I can't just stop teaching him. He's in my class." "Then teach him in class. No more private tutoring. No more locked doors. No more motels." She nodded eagerly, desperately. "Yes. Okay. It was a mistake, Trevor. A stupid mistake. I love you." I didn't say I loved her back. The next morning, Elena left for work early, and I called in sick to the high school. Instead of teaching the Pythagorean theorem to bored teenagers, I drove to the community college and had coffee with Dr. Meredith Klein, the Dean of Academic Affairs. Meredith was 62, gray-haired, and had the kind of sharp intelligence that made students squirm and faculty members watch their step. She'd been at the college for 30 years and had seen every kind of academic scandal imaginable. "Trevor," she said, settling into the booth across from me at the campus coffee shop. "This is unexpected. How's Elena?" "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about." I stirred my coffee slowly, choosing my words carefully. "I'm concerned about her relationship with one of her students." Meredith's expression didn't change, but I saw her posture shift slightly, the subtle alertness of an administrator sensing trouble. "What kind of concern?" "The kind that could become a problem for the college." I didn't elaborate, didn't make accusations. I just let the implications hang in the air while Meredith processed them. She was smart enough to read between the lines. "I see." She sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "Is there anything specific I should know about?" "Not yet, but if there were, hypothetically, what would the college's response be?" "Hypothetically?" Any inappropriate relationship between faculty and students would be grounds for immediate suspension pending investigation. The college takes these matters very seriously, especially given the current climate around campus harassment. And the student involved would likely face disciplinary action as well, possible suspension or expulsion, depending on the circumstances. Academic integrity violations, honor code breaches, these things follow students to other institutions. I nodded, filing away the information. I appreciate your time, Meredith. Trevor, she said as I started to stand, if this hypothetical situation becomes real, I hope you'll bring it to my attention promptly. The college can't address problems we don't know about. Of course. That afternoon, I drove to the high school and taught my classes like nothing had happened. But during my lunch break, I made some calls. The first was to a private investigator named Marcus Webb, no relation to the forbidden name in my instructions, just a local guy who did background checks and insurance fraud cases. I'd found his name online, and his reviews suggested he was thorough and discreet. I need information on someone, I told him over the phone. What kind of information? Everything. Financial records, academic history, social media, criminal background, whatever you can find legally. This about a divorce? Not yet. The second call was to my old college roommate, Dave Chen, who worked as a journalist for the Albany Times-Union. Dave specialized in education stories, budget cuts, administrative scandals, the occasional teacher-student controversy. Trevor Langley, he said when he answered. Been a while. What's going on? Hypothetically, I said, if you had a story about faculty misconduct at a small college, how would you handle it? Hypothetically, very carefully. Lots of verification, multiple sources, legal review. Why? Just curious about the process. You know, if someone had evidence of actual misconduct, that would be a public interest story. Taxpayer-funded institution, duty to report, all that. Good to know. The third call was to my insurance agent. I increased my renter's insurance coverage and added an umbrella policy. If Elena was going to blow up our life, I wanted to make sure I was protected from the fallout. That evening, Elena came home with flowers and a bottle of wine, peace offerings that would have meant something a week ago. Now they just looked like props in a performance. I thought we could cook dinner together, she said. Like we used to. We made pasta and talked about safe subjects, the weather, her sister's new job, my students' latest complaints about homework. She was trying hard to be the wife she'd been before Jace Porter entered the picture, but it felt forced, desperate. After dinner, we sat on the couch watching a movie. Elena curled against my side like she was trying to physically hold our marriage together. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with text messages, but she ignored them. Aren't you going to check that? I asked. It's probably just work stuff, nothing important. The phone buzzed again. Elena reached for it quickly, but I was faster. The screen showed 3 unread messages from JP, all sent within the last hour. Where are you? We need to talk. This is crazy. We can work this out. Don't let him control you like this. I handed the phone back to Elena, who was staring at me with a mixture of fear and defiance. You said you were going to stop, I said quietly. I am. I will. He doesn't understand. Then make him understand. She typed a quick response, her fingers shaking slightly. I couldn't see what she wrote, but a few seconds later, her phone rang. Jace's name appeared on the screen. Elena looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me. I should answer this, to explain. Put it on speaker. Trevor, put it on speaker, or I answer it myself. She swiped to accept the call and tapped the speaker button. Jace's voice filled our living room, angry and demanding. Elena, what the hell is going on? You can't just cut me off like this. Jace, we can't. This isn't appropriate anymore. Inappropriate. You didn't think it was inappropriate when you were… Jace! Elena's voice was sharp with warning. My husband is here? A pause. Then, so? He already knows, doesn't he? Might as well be honest about it. I leaned forward and spoke toward the phone. Hello, Jace? Mr. Langley. His voice was cooler now, more controlled. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Have there been? Elena and I have a professional relationship, student and teacher. If you're interpreting that as something else, that's your problem. My problem, I repeated. Interesting perspective. Look, I don't know what Elena's told you, but… She hasn't told me anything, I interrupted. I figured it out myself. I'm good at solving problems, Jace. It's what I do for a living. This is ridiculous. Elena, we need to talk privately. No, Elena said quickly. We don't. Whatever this was, it's over. You don't mean that. Yes, I do. Fine. Jace's voice turned cold. But don't think this ends here. I've got too much invested in this relationship to just walk away. The line went silent. Elena and I sat in silence, staring at her phone like it might explode. What did he mean by that? I asked. I don't know. He's just upset. But I could see in her eyes that she knew exactly what he meant, and whatever it was, it scared her. That night, after Elena fell asleep, I got up and went to my laptop. Marcus Webb had already sent his preliminary report on Jace Porter, and it made for interesting reading. Jace came from money. His father's car dealerships were worth several $1,000,000. But Jace himself was leveraged to the hilt. Student loans, credit card debt, a car payment that was more than my monthly rent. His grades were mediocre at best, and he'd been on academic probation twice. More interesting was his disciplinary record. 2 complaints for harassment from female students, both dismissed due to lack of evidence. A citation for underage drinking, a suspicious incident involving exam answers that was never formally investigated. Jace Porter wasn't just entitled, he was desperate. His scholarship was need-based, and if his grades slipped or if he faced disciplinary action, he'd lose it. Without the scholarship, he'd have to drop out or find another way to pay for school. No wonder he'd been so interested in private tutoring sessions with Elena. I forwarded the report to my personal email account and deleted it from my laptop. Then I made another recording, this time of Jace's phone call, focusing on the parts where he'd essentially admitted to an inappropriate relationship with Elena. By the time I went back to bed, I had enough evidence to destroy both of their careers and reputations. The question was how and when to use it. Elena was lying on her side, facing away from me, but I could tell from her breathing that she wasn't asleep. She was probably staring at the wall, wondering how her exciting affair had turned into such a nightmare so quickly. I closed my eyes and started planning my next move. The next few days passed in a strange kind of domestic theater. Elena played the role of the repentant wife, bringing me coffee in the morning, asking about my day, suggesting weekend activities like we were a normal couple working through normal problems. I played along, watching her performance with the detached interest of a critic reviewing a play he'd already decided to pan. She was trying, I had to give her that. But every time her phone buzzed, every time she checked her email, every time she came home a few minutes late from work, I could see the cracks in her facade. On Thursday evening, she announced she was going grocery shopping and asked if I needed anything. I said no and watched from our bedroom window as she drove away. Then I got in my Honda and followed her. She didn't go to the grocery store. Instead, she drove to a coffee shop near the campus, where Jace was waiting at a corner table. I parked across the street and watched them through the window. Their conversation looked intense. Lots of gesturing, Elena shaking her head repeatedly, Jace leaning forward like he was trying to convince her of something. After 20 minutes, Elena stood up and walked toward the door. Jace followed, catching her arm in the parking lot. She pulled away, but not before he pressed something into her hand, a piece of paper maybe, or a flash drive. I started my car and drove home, arriving 15 minutes before Elena returned with a single bag of groceries, obviously purchased as an alibi. "Get everything you needed?" I asked as she unpacked milk, bread, and a package of cookies. Yes. The store was crowded, though. Took forever. That night, after Elena went to sleep, I checked her laptop. She'd cleared her browser history, but she'd forgotten about the automatic backup to her cloud storage account. I found what I was looking for in a folder labeled Student Files. Dozens of photos and videos that definitely weren't part of any Spanish curriculum. Some were innocent enough, Jace at various campus events, group shots with other students, but others were more intimate. Jace shirtless at what looked like a beach party. Jace and Elena at a restaurant I didn't recognize, sitting close together, her hand on his chest. A selfie of them in what was clearly a motel room, both looking flushed and disheveled. The timestamps went back 4 months. I copied everything to a flash drive, then deleted the files from Elena's cloud account. She'd notice eventually, but by then it wouldn't matter. The next morning, I called in sick again and drove to the community college. Instead of going to the administrative building, I parked near the language arts wing and waited. At 10:15, Jace's red Mustang pulled into the faculty parking lot, the section reserved for staff, not students. He walked into the building like he owned it, confident and careless. I gave him 5 minutes, then followed. The language arts building was old, with narrow hallways and high ceilings that made every sound echo. I could hear voices from various classrooms, lectures in progress, discussions, the occasional burst of laughter. Elena's office was on the second floor, at the end of a corridor lined with bulletin boards and faculty nameplates. Her door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. I walked past casually, like I was looking for someone else's office, and caught a fragment of conversation. Can't just end it like this. We have something special. Told you it's too dangerous now. Trevor suspects. Let him suspect. What's he going to do about it? I kept walking until I reached the stairwell, then doubled back. This time I had my phone ready, recording app open. The old building's acoustics worked in my favor. Voices carried clearly through the thin walls and old doors. Not thinking clearly, Elena. This is just temporary panic. No, Jace. This is me coming to my senses. After everything we've shared, after all the risks we've taken, that's exactly why we have to stop. The risks are too high. For you, maybe. But what about me? What about my grades? There it was, the admission I'd been waiting for. Jace wasn't just Elena's lover, he was essentially paying for grades with connection. That made this not just adultery, but academic fraud, which would destroy both their careers and possibly land them in legal trouble. Your grades are your responsibility, Elena said, but her voice lacked conviction. Come on. We both know I was failing before we started our private sessions. You can't just cut me off now. I can and I will. Really? Because I don't think you understand what I'm capable of when people disappoint me. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. I pressed closer to the door, making sure my phone was picking up everything. What's that supposed to mean? Elena asked. It means I have just as much to lose as you do, maybe more, and I don't lose gracefully. Jace, you're scaring me. Good. Maybe that'll help you think more clearly about this situation. I heard footsteps moving toward the door and quickly walked back toward the stairwell. Jace emerged from Elena's office, his face flushed with anger. He saw me and stopped short. Mr. Langley, what are you doing here? Visiting my wife, I said calmly. Problem? His eyes narrowed, and I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much I might have overheard. No problem. Just finishing up some tutoring. I'll bet. He started to say something else, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, he walked past me toward the stairwell, his footsteps echoing in the narrow hallway. I waited until I heard the exterior door close, then knocked on Elena's office door. Come in. Elena was sitting behind her desk, looking pale and shaken. When she saw me, she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Trevor! What a surprise! What are you doing here? Thought I'd take you to lunch. I sat down in the chair Jace had probably just vacated, noting that it was still warm. You look upset. Everything okay? Fine. Just difficult students. You know how it is. Actually, I don't. My students usually don't threaten me when I try to maintain professional boundaries. Elena's face went white. You heard that? Enough. I leaned back in the chair, studying her face. So, he's been blackmailing you for grades. How long has that been going on? It's not blackmail, it's complicated. Seems pretty simple to me. He was failing, you started sleeping with him, his grades improved, now he's threatening you to keep the arrangement going. Trevor, please. Please what? Please pretend this isn't happening. Please ignore the fact that my wife is being coerced by a student half her age. Elena started crying again, the same desperate tears from the other night, but this time I felt something other than cold detachment. I felt anger, not at her affair, but at the way Jace was manipulating her, threatening her. What exactly is he threatening you with? I asked. He has pictures, videos, things that would ruin my career if they got out. What kind of pictures? She couldn't meet my eyes. The kind that would end my marriage, too. I thought about the files I'd found on her laptop, the ones I'd already copied and deleted. Apparently, Jace had his own collection. Elena, I said quietly, I need you to listen to me very carefully. This situation is about to get much worse if we don't handle it properly. What do you mean? I mean, Jace Porter isn't just some lovesick kid. He's a predator who's been using you for grades and now thinks he owns you, and predators don't stop until someone stops them. She looked up at me with something like hope in her eyes. What are you going to do? I'm going to solve the problem. That afternoon, I drove to Marcus Webb's office in downtown Grayfield. It was a small space above a pizza shop, furnished with second-hand furniture and filing cabinets that had seen better decades. Marcus himself was about 50, with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen every kind of human weakness imaginable. You've got quite a situation here, he said, reviewing the file he'd compiled on Jace Porter. Kid's got a pattern of this behavior. The 2 harassment complaints I mentioned, both involved female faculty members. One was a teaching assistant, the other was an adjunct professor in the English department. What happened to those cases? Dismissed due to lack of evidence, but I talked to some people who were around at the time. Both women suddenly withdrew their complaints and left the college shortly afterward. Blackmail. That'd be my guess. Kid's got a system, target vulnerable faculty, seduce them, document everything, then use the evidence to get what he wants. And what does he want? Grades, recommendations, access to academic opportunities he doesn't deserve. His transcript looks like a roller coaster. Failing grades suddenly becoming A's, incomplete assignments mysteriously getting full credit. Marcus handed me a thick folder. Everything's in there. Financial records, academic history, social media analysis, interviews with former classmates and faculty. Kid's a sociopath, Mr. Langley. He's been gaming the system for years. What about his family? His father's car dealerships? Leverage to the hilt. The old man's been covering Jace's debts for years, but there's a limit to how much he can absorb. If Jace loses his scholarship or gets expelled, the family business could be in serious trouble. I paid Marcus his fee and drove home with the folder, my mind already working through the possibilities. Jace Porter thought he was playing chess, but he'd been playing checkers. He'd focused so intently on controlling Elena that he'd never considered the possibility that someone else might be watching, planning, preparing to destroy him. That evening, Elena came home looking haggard and nervous. She'd been jumping at shadows all day, probably expecting Jace to make good on his threats. Any more contact from your gifted student? I asked over dinner. He sent some texts, nothing specific, just reminders that we need to talk. Show me. She hesitated, then handed me her phone. Jace's messages were carefully worded but unmistakably threatening. Hope you're thinking clearly about our situation. Would hate for anyone to see those photos we took. Your choice, but choose wisely. I handed the phone back. Forward those to your personal email account. We're going to need them. For what? Evidence. That night, I sat at my laptop and began crafting my masterpiece, a comprehensive dossier on Jace Porter that would destroy his life as thoroughly as he'd tried to destroy Elena's. Academic fraud, coercion, blackmail, harassment. It was all there, documented with timestamps, photographs, and recorded conversations. But I wasn't going to just dump it on Dr. Klein's desk and hope for the best. That would be too simple, too clean. Jace Porter had made this personal when he'd threatened my wife. Now I was going to make it personal for him. I started with his social media accounts. Jace was active on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, posting regularly about his life, his achievements, his opinions on everything from sports to politics. He was careless with his privacy settings, and his posts painted a picture of an entitled young man who believed the world owed him success. More importantly, his posts provided a detailed timeline of his activities, including several that correlated exactly with times when he should have been in class or taking exams. Academic integrity violations were serious enough, but skipping mandatory classes to party while receiving passing grades was the kind of obvious fraud that would trigger a full investigation. I compiled screenshots of everything, cross-referenced with his academic records, and prepared a timeline that would shock any administrator. Then I moved on to his financial records. Marcus had done excellent work here. Jace's spending patterns were erratic and excessive. Expensive dinners, luxury purchases, weekend trips that cost more than most students spent in a month. But his income sources were murky. He claimed to work part-time at his father's dealership, but the pay stubs didn't match the lifestyle. Where was the money coming from? I dug deeper and found the answer in his credit card statements. Jace had been using his student loan money, funds specifically designated for education expenses, to finance his lifestyle. That was federal fraud, punishable by fines and imprisonment. But the best discovery was in his email account, which Marcus had accessed through a combination of social engineering and Jace's own carelessness with passwords. Buried in his sent folder were messages to other students offering to help them improve their grades in exchange for payment. Jace Porter wasn't just blackmailing Elena for his own grades, he was running a broader academic fraud scheme, selling access to compromised faculty members to other struggling students. I had enough evidence to destroy him 10 times over. The question was how to deploy it for maximum effect. I closed my laptop and went to bed, where Elena was lying awake staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep?" I asked. "He called tonight while you were working. I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail." "What did it say?" "That I have until tomorrow to make up my mind. After that, he's going to start sharing our private moments with the world." I rolled over and put my arm around her, feeling her tense body gradually relax against mine. "Elena," I said quietly, "I want you to call him tomorrow and agree to meet." "What?" "Trevor, no, I can't." "Yes, you can. Because this time, you're not going alone." She turned to look at me in the darkness. "What are you planning?" "I'm planning to give Jace Porter exactly what he deserves." Elena made the call at lunch on Friday, her hands shaking as she dialed Jace's number. I sat beside her in our kitchen, listening on speaker as his arrogant voice filled the room. "Elena, I was wondering when you'd come to your senses." "We need to talk," she said, following the script we'd rehearsed. "But not at the college. Too risky." "Smart girl. Where?" "The Sleepy Inn, room 237, 7 o'clock tonight." A pause. "Our old room? I like that. Shows you remember what we had." "Just be there, Jace." "Oh, I'll be there. And Elena? Come alone. If I see your husband anywhere near that motel, those photos go viral within the hour." The line went silent. Elena looked at me with terrified eyes. I can't do this, Trevor. What if he hurts me? He won't get the chance. I showed her the recording app on my phone. Everything he says tonight is going to be documented, and you won't be as alone as he thinks. At 6:30, Elena drove to the Sleepy Inn while I took a roundabout route, parking behind the dumpster where my Honda wouldn't be visible from the motel office. The room Elena had booked was on the second floor, accessible by an exterior staircase that provided perfect cover for someone who wanted to listen in on the conversation inside. I climbed the stairs and found a position outside the window, my phone ready to record. The curtains were thin, and I could see Elena sitting on the edge of the bed, checking her watch nervously. At 7:15, Jace's Mustang pulled into the parking lot. He bounded up the stairs 2 at a time, radiating the kind of confidence that comes from believing you hold all the cards. He knocked once and walked in without waiting for an invitation. Elena, baby, I knew you'd see reason. Don't call me baby. Come on, don't be like that. We both know why you're here. I pressed record and moved closer to the window. Through the gap in the curtains, I could see Jace sitting beside Elena on the bed, his hand moving to her thigh. I'm here to end this, Elena said, pulling away from him. Whatever we had, it's over. No, it's not. It's never going to be over, Elena. You belong to me now. I belong to my husband. Jace laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Your husband? That pathetic math teacher who can't even keep his own wife satisfied? He's nothing, Elena. I'm your future. You're 21 years old. You're a student. This was a mistake. A mistake that got me an A in advanced Spanish conversation. A mistake that's going to keep getting me A's until I graduate. There it was, the explicit admission of academic fraud that would end his college career. And if I refuse? Elena asked. Then everyone gets to see just how passionate Professor Langley really is when she's alone with her favorite student. Jace pulled out his phone and showed Elena something on the screen. I've got hours of video, baby. Every position, every sound you made, your husband, your colleagues, your students, they'll all get to see what a dirty girl you really are. Elena started crying, but I felt only cold satisfaction. Jace was digging his own grave with every word. Please, Elena whispered. I'll lose everything. Only if you don't cooperate. Play along, keep giving me what I need academically, and your secrets stay between us. It's simple. And if my husband finds out? Then you divorce him and marry me after I graduate. Win-win. The sheer arrogance of it was breathtaking. Jace Porter actually believed he could blackmail Elena into leaving me and marrying him. He'd watched too many movies, read too many stories where the young stud gets the older woman and they ride off into the sunset together. I need time to think, Elena said. You've had time. I need an answer now. Jace, please. Now, Elena. His voice had turned hard, threatening. I saw him grab her wrist, saw Elena try to pull away. That's when I decided to make my entrance. I knocked on the door. 3 sharp raps that made both of them freeze. Expecting someone? I called out cheerfully. Jace jumped up from the bed, his face going pale. You said you came alone. I lied. Elena stood up, moving away from him toward the door. Just like you've been lying about everything else. I knocked again. Elena? Everything okay in there? She opened the door and I walked in like I was arriving at a dinner party. Jace stood in the middle of the room, looking like he wanted to run but had nowhere to go. Jace, what a surprise. Fancy meeting you here. This is a private conversation, he said, trying to recover his composure. Is it? Because it sounded like extortion to me. I held up my phone, showing the recording app. Academic dishonesty, coercion, blackmail. Quite a conversation indeed. His eyes went wide as he realized what I'd done. That's illegal. You can't record people without their consent. Actually, I can. New York is a one-party consent state, and Elena consented to this recording. Didn't you, honey? Elena nodded, finding her voice. I consented. Jace looked back and forth between us, understanding finally dawning that he'd walked into a trap. "You think you're smart," he said, his voice rising. "But I've got insurance. Those photos, those videos, they go public if anything happens to me." "You mean these photos?" I pulled out my own phone and showed him screenshots from Elena's cloud account, the same files I'd copied and deleted days earlier. "Or maybe you mean the videos from your personal collection? The ones you've been using to blackmail other faculty members?" His face went from pale to gray. "How did you get access to your files? Let's just say you're not as careful with your passwords as you think you are." I scrolled through the evidence I'd compiled. Academic fraud, federal loan fraud, harassment, blackmail, coercion. You've been busy, Jace. You can't prove anything. Can't I? I played back a portion of the conversation I'd just recorded, his voice clear and incriminating. "A mistake that got me an A in advanced Spanish conversation. A mistake that's going to keep getting me A's until I graduate." Jace lunged for my phone, but I was ready for him. 2 years of boxing with Hank had taught me to read a punch before it was thrown. I sidestepped his clumsy attack and caught him with a short right hook to the ribs that dropped him to his knees, gasping. "Stay down," I advised. "You're not as tough as you think you are." He struggled to his feet, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. "This isn't over. I'll destroy both of you." "No," I said calmly, "you won't. Because if you try, every piece of evidence I've collected goes to the college administration, the district attorney's office, and your father's business partners. Your academic career will be over, you'll face federal charges for loan fraud, and your family's financial empire will collapse under the weight of the scandal." "You're bluffing." "Am I? Let me tell you what I know about your little operation, Jace." I pulled out the folder Marcus Webb had compiled and started reading. "Sarah Mitchell, English department teaching assistant. You seduced her, documented it, then blackmailed her for grades until she withdrew her harassment complaint and left the college. Dr. Patricia Vance, adjunct professor in the sociology department. Same pattern: seduction, documentation, coercion, silence." Jace's face had gone completely white now. "But that's not all," I continued. "You've been selling access to compromised faculty members to other students. Tommy Rodriguez paid you $500 to fix his failing grade in Professor Mitchell's composition class. Jennifer Walsh paid you $300 to get her paper timeline extended in Dr. Vance's research methods course. Should I go on?" "How could you possibly know all that?" "Because I'm good at solving problems, Jace, and you've been a very big problem." Elena was staring at me with something like awe. She'd never seen this side of me. Cold, calculating, ruthless. I wasn't sure I'd known it existed myself until Jace Porter had threatened my wife. "What do you want?" Jace asked finally. "I want you gone. Transferred to another school, out of Elena's classes, out of our lives." "I can't just transfer. I'll lose my scholarship, my financial aid." "Should have thought of that before you started your little blackmail scheme. My father will never forgive me if I get kicked out of school." "Then you'd better hope the college you transfer to doesn't ask too many questions about why you're leaving." Jace looked around the motel room like he was seeing it for the first time. The faded carpet, the water-stained ceiling, the bed where he'd planned to continue his coercion of my wife. His whole world was collapsing, and he knew it. "And if I don't transfer?" "Then Monday morning, Dr. Klein gets a complete dossier on your activities, along with recorded evidence of academic fraud and coercion. The district attorney gets a report on your federal loan violations. Your father gets copies of everything, along with a detailed explanation of how his son's criminal activities could impact his business relationships." "You bastard." "Maybe. But I'm a bastard who's protecting his wife from a predator. That makes me the good guy in this story." Jay stood there for a long moment, his hands clenched into fists, his face a mask of impotent rage. Then, slowly, the fight went out of him. His shoulders sagged, his hands unclenched, and he looked like what he really was, a spoiled kid who'd finally met someone smarter and more ruthless than himself. "How long do I have?" he asked quietly. End of the semester. 2 weeks to arrange a transfer and disappear from our lives forever. And the evidence? Stays locked away as long as you stay gone and keep your mouth shut. He nodded slowly, then walked toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. You know she came to me, right? I didn't seduce her, she seduced me. Your perfect wife threw herself at a student half her age because you weren't man enough to satisfy her. Elena gasped, but I just smiled. You're probably right, I said. But here's the thing, Jace. I don't care. She's my wife, not yours. And if you ever contact her again, if you ever even think about her again, I'll destroy you so completely that your own father won't recognize what's left. He left without another word, his footsteps echoing on the metal stairs as he descended to the parking lot. A few seconds later, we heard his Mustang roar to life and speed away into the night. Elena and I stood in the motel room, surrounded by the debris of her affair and his threats. She was crying again, but these were different tears. Relief, gratitude, maybe even a little fear of what she'd seen me capable of. Is it really over? She asked. It's over. And us? Are we over too? I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. But she was also a stranger who'd betrayed our marriage and put both our careers at risk for the thrill of sleeping with a student. I don't know, I said honestly. That's something we'll have to figure out. We drove home in separate cars, Elena following behind me through the quiet streets of Grayfield. In my rearview mirror, I could see her wiping her eyes, trying to compose herself for whatever came next. But I wasn't thinking about Elena or our marriage or what the future might hold. I was thinking about Jace Porter, about the look on his face when he realized he'd been outplayed, outmaneuvered, and utterly defeated. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Jace Porter lasted exactly 4 days before he tried to get revenge. On Tuesday morning, I arrived at Grayfield High to find Principal Martinez waiting in my classroom with a grim expression and a manila folder in her hands. Trevor, we need to talk. Dr. Carmen Martinez had been principal for 15 years and had the kind of steady demeanor that came from dealing with every crisis imaginable. But today she looked troubled, uncertain, emotions I'd never seen on her face before. What's going on? I asked, setting down my coffee and lesson plans. I received some disturbing materials yesterday, allegations about your wife's conduct at the community college. She opened the folder and showed me printed screenshots of Elena and Jace at various locations, restaurants, the motel, even one that looked like it had been taken in Elena's office. Where did these come from? Anonymous email, sent to me, to the school board president, and to several other faculty members. Carmen's voice was carefully neutral. The sender claims there's video evidence as well. I studied the photos, recognizing them as some of the same images I'd found on Elena's laptop. Jace had kept his own copies, just as I'd suspected. These look like they could be fabricated, I said, calmly. Could be. But if they're real... Carmen didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. A high school teacher married to a college instructor who was sleeping with students would be a scandal that would destroy both our careers. I understand your concern, I said. What do you need from me? The truth. Are these photos real? I looked at Carmen Martinez, a woman I'd worked with for 8 years, someone who'd supported my teaching methods and defended me when parents complained about my homework policies. She deserved honesty. Yes, I said. They're real. Carmen closed her eyes for a moment, processing the implications. Trevor, I'm sorry, but I have to place you on administrative leave pending an investigation. The school board will want to review everything, determine if this impacts your fitness to teach. I understand. This doesn't necessarily mean termination, but... She spread her hands helplessly. The optics are terrible. A teacher whose spouse is having an affair with a student. Parents will have concerns about judgment, about professional boundaries. I nodded, already calculating my next moves. Jace thought he was destroying my career, but he'd just made a critical mistake. By going after me instead of just disappearing, he'd violated our agreement and given me justification to release everything I had on him. Carmen, can I ask you something? Of course. How long do I have before this becomes public knowledge? The school board meets Thursday night. If they decide to terminate you, it'll be in the local paper by Friday. And if they decide to keep me, then we'll issue a statement about the investigation concluding with no action taken. Either way, the rumors will follow you. I thanked Carmen and cleaned out my desk, packing my personal items into a cardboard box, while she watched with obvious discomfort. By noon, I was driving home with my teaching career in limbo and my marriage hanging by a thread. Elena was waiting in our apartment, her face streaked with tears. They fired me, she said as soon as I walked in. Dr. Klein called me into her office this morning and terminated me effective immediately. Someone sent her the same photos plus video clips. Jace? Who else? He's destroying both of us, just like he threatened. I set down my box and pulled out my phone, scrolling to Jace's contact information. What are you doing? Elena asked. Ending this. I called his number. He answered on the second ring, and I could hear the smugness in his voice. Mr. Langley, how's your day going? You violated our agreement. What agreement? I don't remember signing anything. You had 2 weeks to transfer and disappear. Instead, you sent photos to my principal and Elena's dean. Prove it. I don't have to prove it. I just have to respond to it. A pause. What's that supposed to mean? It means you just declared war on the wrong person. I hung up and immediately called Dr. Klein's office. Dr. Klein, this is Trevor Langley. I understand you've received some disturbing materials about my wife. Trevor, I'm sorry, but I can't discuss personnel matters. I'm not calling about Elena. I'm calling about Jace Porter. Another pause. What about Mr. Porter? I have evidence that he's been running an academic fraud scheme, blackmailing faculty members for grades, and using federal student loan money to finance a lifestyle that violates the terms of his financial aid. That's a very serious accusation. It's also completely documented. I can be in your office in 20 minutes with a complete dossier. I'll be here. Next, I called Dave Chen at the Albany Times-Union. Dave, it's Trevor. Remember that hypothetical story we discussed about faculty misconduct? Yeah? It's not hypothetical anymore, and it's bigger than I thought. How much bigger? Multi-victim blackmail scheme, academic fraud, federal crimes, and I have recorded confessions. Jesus, Trevor, how did you— Never mind, can you prove everything? Every word. I can be there tonight. Finally, I called Marcus Webb. Marcus, I need you to deliver a package to someone. What kind of package? The kind that ends careers and destroys reputations. Can you get something to Jace Porter's father within the hour? For the right price, I can get it to him in 20 minutes. While Elena sat on our couch staring at the wall, I assembled 3 identical packages, complete dossiers on Jace Porter's criminal activities, including financial records, academic fraud evidence, recordings of his blackmail attempts, and a detailed timeline of his predatory behavior with faculty members. 1 package went to Dr. Klein, 1 went to Dave Chen, 1 went to Jace's father, along with a cover letter explaining how his son's activities could impact the family business and suggesting that immediate action might prevent criminal charges. By 4 o'clock, all 3 packages had been delivered. By 5 o'clock, my phone was ringing. Mr. Langley, this is Robert Porter, Jace's father. Mr. Porter, thank you for calling. I've reviewed the materials you sent. If they're accurate, my son is in serious trouble. They're accurate. Every document is authenticated. Every recording is time-stamped. Every financial record is verified. What do you want from me? I want your son gone. Not just transferred, gone, out of New York, out of Elena's life, out of any position where he can hurt other people. And if I arrange that? Then the criminal referral I've prepared for the district attorney stays in my filing cabinet. You'd do that? Even after what he's done to your wife? Mr. Porter, I don't want to destroy a young man's life. I just want to protect my wife and other potential victims from a predator. Give me 24 hours. The next morning, Elena and I were having coffee when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Transferred to Arizona State. Leaving tonight. You win. I showed the message to Elena, who read it twice before looking up at me. Is it really over this time? It's over. And what about us? I'd been thinking about that question for days, weighing love against betrayal, history against hurt. Elena had made terrible choices, but she'd also been victimized by a predator who'd exploited her vulnerabilities and threatened her career. The situation was more complex than simple adultery. I don't know, I said honestly. We have a lot to work through. I'm willing to try, to do whatever it takes. Even counseling? Even complete transparency? Even accepting that trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild? Yes, all of it. I nodded, not making any promises but not closing any doors either. That afternoon, Dr. Klein called. Trevor, I've reviewed your materials thoroughly. Mr. Porter has withdrawn from the college, effective immediately. We're also conducting a broader investigation into academic integrity violations. And Elena? Given the evidence that she was being coerced and blackmailed, the college is prepared to reconsider her termination. She'll face disciplinary action, suspension without pay for the remainder of the semester, but she can reapply for her position in the fall. It wasn't complete vindication, but it was better than I'd hoped for. The next call came from Principal Martinez. Trevor, the school board met last night. Given the new information about the blackmail situation, they've voted to end your administrative leave. You can return to work Monday. Thank you, Carmen. There is one condition. You and Elena need to attend marriage counseling. The board wants assurance that your personal situation won't impact your professional judgment. We can do that. The final call came from Dave Chen. Trevor, this story is incredible. Academic fraud, blackmail, federal crimes, it's got everything. But I need to ask, are you sure you want me to publish this? It's going to put you and Elena in the spotlight. Publish it, I said. Other women need to know what Jace Porter is capable of, and other predators need to know that their victims might have husbands who fight back. The story ran the following Sunday, front page of the Times-Union, college students' blackmail scheme exposed. It detailed Jace's systematic targeting of female faculty members, his academic fraud, and his use of coercion to manipulate grades. The article mentioned Elena as one of his victims, but focused primarily on the criminal aspects of his behavior. By Monday morning, the story had been picked up by regional news outlets and education blogs. Jace Porter became the poster child for everything wrong with campus culture, a cautionary tale about privilege and predatory behavior. I never heard from him again. Elena and I started marriage counseling that week with Dr. Sarah Hendricks, a therapist who specialized in infidelity and trust issues. The sessions were difficult, painful, sometimes brutal in their honesty. Elena had to confront her choices, her motivations, her willingness to risk everything for the excitement of an affair. I had to confront my own role in our marriage's problems, my emotional distance, my tendency to solve problems with logic rather than empathy. But slowly, gradually, we began to rebuild. Elena returned to the community college in the fall, chastened but determined to prove herself worthy of a second chance. She threw herself into her teaching with renewed passion, developing new curricula and mentoring programs that helped struggling students without crossing professional boundaries. I returned to my high school classroom with a new understanding of my own capabilities. I'd always seen myself as a mild-mannered math teacher, someone who solved equations rather than life problems. But when my marriage was threatened, when Elena was being victimized, I'd discovered reserves of strength and ruthlessness I'd never known I possessed. The experience changed me. I was still the same person who loved teaching algebra and watching documentaries, but I was also someone who would go to extraordinary lengths to protect the people I loved. 6 months later, Elena and I were having dinner at El Toro, the same restaurant where I'd first confronted her affair. Tina, the bartender who'd witnessed that awkward evening, came over to our table. "Good to see you two back together," she said. "You look happy." "We're working on it," Elena replied, squeezing my hand. "That young guy ever come back around?" Tina asked. "No," I said. "He found somewhere else to be gifted." Tina laughed and walked away, leaving Elena and me alone with our sangria and tapas and the slow, careful work of rebuilding trust. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked quietly. "What you did to Jace?" I thought about it, really thought about it. I'd destroyed a young man's college career, forced him to flee across the country, and exposed his crimes to public scrutiny. It had been calculated, ruthless, and completely necessary. "No," I said. "He made his choices. I just made sure he faced the consequences." "And if he comes back someday? If he tries to get revenge again?" I smiled, thinking about the files still locked in my home safe, the recordings still stored on encrypted drives, the network of contacts I'd built during my investigation. Then he'll discover that some problems solve themselves and others get solved by people who are very good at math. Elena laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from her in months. It wasn't the same as it had been before Jace Porter entered our lives, but it was real, and it was ours. Outside El Toro, the lights of Grayfield twinkled in the darkness, and somewhere in Arizona, a predator was learning to live with the consequences of his actions. Justice had been served, not by courts or administrators, but by a math teacher who'd discovered that some equations could only be solved with ruthless precision. The problem was solved. The variables had been eliminated. And Trevor Langley, mild-mannered educator and unlikely vigilante, had proven that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone underestimates.